talked about your own organisations and why you've started this journey, but tell us why you think fundamentally it's the right thing to do. Why do you believe that equal pay is something that you feel energised against, towards achieving?
I think that just because it is, why should it be unequal? And I think that we're all parents and we've got sisters and daughters and granddaughters, and so why would you ever expect that your daughter or your son is going to be paid differently for the same? It's just simply not fair. It's simply not fair.
Yeah, look, I think it just simply as I say, comes down to values. It's the right thing to do. I don't actually think people, organisations or individuals set out to pay people equitably. There are some really complex reasons why that's the outcome, and as we've talked about, you've got to really try and unpack that and understand what's going on. It's, I don't think, a deliberate intent. It's the way it turns out. But I think for me personally, I grew up in the 80s where, those of you who also did will of course remember the Girls Can Do Anything campaigns, and I grew up, firmly believing girls can do anything. So to get to this age and realise that whilst you might have made great strides in terms of the sorts of jobs that are open to women today, armed forces and so on and so forth, at the end of the day, we're still completely underrepresented in the senior levels of businesses, no female CEOs, and we're still being paid, what is it, a 14% gap in terms of pay. So that's all a bit disappointing, really, given how much progress we've made in other areas, and it's just not right.
Well, the world's changing, isn't it, real quick? And millennials I've got great hope for millennial women. PricewaterhouseCoopers did a fantastic report a couple of years ago, showing how millennials are better educated than any generation that went before them and are more confident than any generation that went before them. And I talked to businesses interested in this area, and they explain how that's changing their culture in their workforce and their recruitment practices. And Auckland in particular being one of the most diverse cities in the world, I just think smart businesses know that this is just get on that wave, or you're going to get washed out by it. For me, pay equity is the cornerstone. Equal pay, is the cornerstone of that diversity agenda. If you're not paying men and women fairly, how on earth can you tackle everything else? That if you get that foundation right, you can then start doing all of the other analysis that's been spoken about today.
For sure.
Why? It's simple, as everyone has said, paying someone based on their gender isn't right, isn't acceptable. But from a personal perspective, I've got two daughters, and I was explaining to my 11-year-old daughter what I was going to be doing tonight. And I thought, gosh, I really don't know how to talk to her about this. And because it's actually embarrassing to talk about it with a young girl. So for me personally, it's inspiration for our children and what they are going to be dealing with when they enter the workforce. And hopefully, by the time my children enter the workforce, then it will be there'll be differences made.
Thinking about, for anybody in this audience that hasn't entered the Equal Pay Awards before, what are some of the things that you would say to them? Firstly, maybe it's around the experience of actually entering the award. Perhaps it's the experience after you've perhaps received an award and the way that your staff have responded to that, or even from an external point of view, how your brand has been affected by doing these things. What would you say to our audience?
I'd say, as we said in the presentation, just do it. It's not difficult, it's not hard. The hardest thing is actually getting started.
Yeah.
Once you get started, it is a bit of a momentum and it is a bit of a journey, and you realise how the changes that you are making are impacting upon a whole lot of areas, not just on equal pay. So I would say go for it, get started. Little changes can make a big difference. The benefits that we've seen have been more than we imagined, and it has helped us, make more changes and continue on our journey. So we'd love that to happen to other organisations as well.
If you've worked for different companies, you'll have an appreciation of the fact that there are people involved in companies who are from the dark ages, particularly people that might make decisions. And I've worked in companies like this. And when you are in a position of responsibility, I believe then is the time to start, not a massive jump, as you said, just little bits at a time. Then I think it's the opportunity, you have the opportunity to start making little differences within a business, because it only just does start with little steps. And if it hasn't happened in anyone's company, then maybe that's the next step that has to happen. Maybe it's important enough, and it is important because the government believes it's important, although they're lagging behind a little bit. They think it's important. Good businesses think it's important and believe it's important and take steps to make changes within that company. So I believe if you're in a position where you can make small changes and then continue to make more changes, then I think it's the responsibility of everybody.
Claire, do you know?
Well, look, as I said, wasn't my initiative to have entered, and so I won't take the credit for that. And I think the work that the team at Sky City did was exceptional, and we continue with the initiative that was the winning initiative. But certainly I can see what the impact of having won the award has been, in the sense of there being a lot of discussion and conversation, and it's really highlighted, it's been part of a number of initiatives that have highlighted equal pay as an issue for our organisation. And so I think the awards are really about telling stories, and Susan made a really good point around how you change things is through making them visible. So once you start talking about the issues of pay equity, others start thinking about it, and it's only through sort of being transparent, and that takes a bit of courage because you have to acknowledge that you're not perfect and you're not necessarily nailing it. But and I think organisations in New Zealand at the top are led by male CEOs in the main. They tend to be a pretty competitive bunch. And so I think the more sort of stories about in organisations that are receiving accolades for the progress that they're making, the more interest and momentum we're going to get. And I saw a very good example of that very recently, which I'll share with you, because I think it illustrates it beautifully. Another great organisation working in this space, Global Women, have an initiative called Champions for Change, and our CEO signed up as a champion for change, along with I think 50 or 60 other
So is our managing partner.
CEOs and senior people in organisations, and they're men who are championing diversity. And one of the initiatives that they were asked to sign up to is to report on the diversity of their organisations. So do this sort of gender and ethnicity and so on and so forth, and share that information as a group. We were one of 9 organisations out of the 50 or 60 that signed up to that initiative and agreed over a 2-year period that we would start to disclose this information amongst that peer group. Interestingly, there was a Herald article a week or 2 ago only that talked about the fact that it was really disappointing that of the number of organisations involved in Global Women, only 9 had signed up for the reporting project. Within 2 weeks, we have 100% of the CEOs or the champions for change who have put up their hand and said, I'll be part of that. And it just really illustrated to me, you've got to work with what motivates people, and clearly hearing about success and people getting accolades for being leading in this space is something we can certainly take advantage of and work with. So it's great to get out there, tell the stories and motivate others. It's certainly been our experience.
Yeah, in fact, you've just touched on which was going to be my next question. How important is it that you've got good leadership in your organisation at the C-suite level? CEO level as well as the board level. What difference does that make in Coca-Cola and Little?
Huge difference. If you don't have people, it's got to come from the top down,
Yeah.
I believe. If you don't have good people that are driving it, or at least someone driving them, then you're not going to get things done, and that's anything throughout the company done. At Amateur, we've got the first Kiwi MD ever in 80 odd years, and he's an amazing person. My boss is I think I've had 3 women bosses, and she's one, and she's on the executive. She would have been able to add more than me, but she was going to be here tonight. She couldn't make it. And I think it's just absolutely crucial that you need people driving this, and it can't just be all women. It has to be, guys have to buy into this so that you do it together.
And Paula, as a CEO yourself, and you talked about your board and they've been very engaged. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so I'm the first woman CEO of Youth Town, what was Boys Town, I believe. Very cool. But I just wanted to touch on the benefits of it. So as Janine said, they were more than we thought. So like this is one of the benefits of it. I think we just didn't realise, just the mana that came with winning the Silver Award, and the mana for our staff as well. They're just so proud of it, and it's just been fantastic really from that point of view. So yeah, I mean the whole leadership thing, I don't know, everybody's got a different style of leadership, a different definition of it. People say to me, how did you get here? I go, I don't know, I showed up, I applied for the job, and and there's, I don't know what it is. There's a lot of organisations out there that have never had a woman CEO, but I think it's just like slowly it's going to change.
Slowly but surely we hope. Have you got any questions for the panel since you've got this captured group?
Do you think we hobble ourselves as women sometimes? We forget. I think there's something about we can do everything in the box over here, but sometimes it's cultural. And I'm talking specifically about women who have been at home with babies, children, and they go back to work. And I've got this real thing about that. They go back to paid work. So we don't even acknowledge that kind of work. Do you think that that's something we ought to be changing culturally? We are actually acknowledging that?
Who wants to take that one?
I think there is an element to that. I think I've found the reverse. I went back to paid work and I got hell from the neighbours, they thought they probably should have been staying at. So I got sort of the reverse thing, but I think it's probably just generally a confidence thing. With women actually, if I talk to groups of women, I often talk about the confidence. And I see it in my daughter and my son, my son's 14 and my daughter's 16, and she gets me to review her CV 3 times and he just writes it and sends it off, It's just,
right.
yeah, just slightly different. But yeah, I absolutely understand what you're saying. I mean, I had 3 children, I took breaks, and I was told when I was at an accounting firm, a large accounting firm, that I would never be a part-time partner. And at that, I just chose to leave, and I went and started my own practice so I could work around my children, and that ended my career becoming a partner. So, yeah.
Yeah, we need to set up the systems to make it easier for people to come back into the workforce. So, taking a significant career break, it's actually quite hard to find a role that you can work at your level that may be part-time, for example.
That's right.
So I consider myself to be really lucky. I collect my children 3 days a week, so I do work part-time in a senior role. So it's all of these changes that we can make in organisations that make it easy for women to stay in the workforce, to come back to the workforce, and come back at a level that they need to be at.
Yeah.
I can't speak for women, but you're probably right. This is probably a bigger conversation. But what I do love about what we've been able to do is we have a lot of our women or men, it's open to women or men who want to take time off when they have children. We leave jobs open, and there are a lot that have come back. Probably in the last 12 months we've had a lot of women coming back, and we provide opportunities for them.
I think it's it also gets to the heart a bit of the Terra Nova case and settlement, because it's around that fundamental value that society places on caring type work. So it's been challenged, and the first steps have been taken on that, is the way I sort of look at the Terra Nova case. And we don't yet know what the flow-on impacts and ripple effect of that are going to be.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's about having very much trying to have a fact-based conversation, because it's a very emotive subject, and you know, there's so many people have so many different perspectives on work and paid work versus other types of work, and I think for us we've just tried to take a really quite systemic view of this whole issue, because it's so multifaceted. You know, pay is one piece, but the pipeline and how women progress through that pipeline in an organisation is equally having an impact. Things like what happens when someone steps out of the organisation for paid for parental leave, but for other reasons as well, and comes back. What happens to their pay whilst they're away? You know, you ensuring that they're keeping pace. You know, ourselves and other organisations, you know, continue to review salary levels whilst the person's out of the organisation. But you know, and the it was interesting hearing you talking about the domestic violence policy program that you put in place. We've recently taken a step to put in place a program where we provide additional paid time off work to attend court dates or medical, you know, anything associated with being a victim or supporting a victim of domestic violence, because the output of that issue is often on employment. You know, women tend to fall behind in their employment, end up losing their jobs, or be viewed as a problem employee because they've had used up all their paid leave, and now they're having to take unpaid leave. And so it's really taking a really holistic sort of view of all of the different facets of this issue, and trying to do what you can where you can. But it's complex. I think for me, as I said a moment ago, it's having a fact-based conversation, so doing your analysis and really understanding what's going on, and being able to, because otherwise it can become quite emotive and subjective, and people bring their personal views to the table, but being able to have done your research and really talk about exactly what's going on in an organisation. You know, for us, for example, we employ our whole employee population in our Auckland business, which is our largest one, is essentially 50% female, 50% male, and we have a very flexible 24/7 operation, and there's lots of different types of work arrangements. So we have a lot of the ingredients that would suggest that you would not have a pay gap. And yet when we look at, you know, unpacking that, we do in fact. And so you've got to really start cutting and dicing and understanding what's really going on, and driving that, because it's not simple, a simple matter of saying we've got 50% male and 50% female and they should be paid the same. That's when I get to what is happening with the pipeline of talent. Is it that men are being promoted into the more senior roles that are higher paid, which is why when you look at just an average earning across the whole population, there's a difference. So it's I think that's been the most useful thing for us.
Yeah, I'd agree on that. I think the other thing too is what gets measured gets done.
Yeah. Yep.
So a few KPIs for that, for some of your executives, but also what we do at EY, we have diversity councils, and we have 5 different pillars. One is gender, one is ethnicity, one is oh God, now I'm tired, I can't think of the other ones. Ethnicity, flexibility, disability, LGBTQI, that's right. So we have programs of work for each one of those pillars, and the people that populate that are actually across the organisation. So it's who wants to be part of change in our organisation. And so we get a lot of the younger people coming through, and they start creating the need for change because it's upward pressure. And so some of those telling the stories and doing something visible is actually quite powerful. I often get in guest speakers to come and have a chat to our staff and to our executive. I had Dr. Jackie Blue, the EEO Commissioner, just the other day come in and talk about imposter syndrome with our staff. And it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. A whole packed room of, everybody from partner level down, and they're all going, my name is Susan and I have the imposter syndrome. But it, speaks to what you were talking about, confidence and those things. But the more that you make the conversation part of the norm, the more things change incrementally. Mm-hmm.
It takes one champion to keep going, talk to colleagues, present the data. I mean, honestly, I had the most funny conversation with one of the general managers, HR, who had the organisation is a thought leader in the area, but he said the first time he raised it with the chief exec, he said, it was full of expletives in the room, but he just kept going, and both men, and he kept going, and now they're so proud of that journey and what they've achieved. But that there needs to be a champion in the senior leadership team somewhere that is really leading the charge on it.
Look, I'm really conscious of time. It's 10 to 8 and you'll be wilting and wanting your dinner and everything else like that. But if there's any last questions, do let us know. Otherwise, we'll be here for a few more minutes. But otherwise, I'd just love to thank you all for your attention tonight and your interaction with us. It's been really wonderful. So thank you very much for everything.
Thank you for coming.